All right, for this lesson, we're going to be talking about different type of angle pairs. So one of the things that we really need to discuss is an angle itself. So an angle has two sides, and the measurement between those two sides is what we call, or what makes up the angle. And we normally measure that in degrees. Now, every angle has what we call a vertex. That's where the two rays, so remember, a ray has an endpoint and an arrow. So that's where the two rays come together. So this area right here, where the two rays come together, is the vertex. Okay, so we're going to be talking about different types of angle pairs. So two angles that share a common vertex. So if you notice right here on the side, they share a common vertex. So what they're talking about is they're talking about this angle right here. So we have angle 1 and we have angle 2. And they share a common side. So they share this side right here, but this angle is angle 1. And then that same side, there's another angle for angle 2. So we call those adjacent angles. So we would say angle 1 is adjacent to angle 2. All right, then we have vertical angles. Now, vertical angles are angles that cross each other from an intersection. Vertical angles are formed when we make an X. So like if I have two lines and those two lines make an X, the angles that are opposite of each other are called congruent. So congruent means they're similar in shape and equal in measure. So congruent means similar in shape and equal in measure. So this little symbol right here means congruent. It's got the similar symbol because that means similar in shape, and the equal sign, which means equal in measure. So opposite angles, so the angles that are across from each other are always the same. So 1 and 2, those are vertical angles, okay? They're opposite of each other. So 1 and 2 are congruent. They have the same measurement. And then 3 and 4, those are opposite of each other. So those share the same measurement. So if we kind of label these, we have angle 1 and angle 2. Those are congruent angles. So that means that the measurement of angle 1 is congruent to the measurement of angle 2. So let's say angle 1 was 60 degrees. That means angle 2 would also be 60 degrees. And then angle 3 and angle 4 are vertical angles. They're opposite of each other. So that means angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. Now we also have what we called complementary angles. So complementary angles are just simply when two angles sum up to be 90 degrees. So complementary angles sum to be 90 degrees. Now we can have complementary angles that are adjacent to each other. So these two are adjacent because they share that common side. So remember, adjacent angles are going to share a common side, okay, and they share the same vertex. So they can be complementary because we have this 90-degree mark. So that means that the whole 1 and 2 together is 90 degrees. Or we can just have two separate angles that, when added up, equal 90 degrees. So we know that 53 and 37 added together equal 90. You hear the word complementary, that simply means that it's two angles that are added together to equal 90 degrees. All right, we also have what we call supplementary. Supplemental angles are angles that add up to be 180 degrees. So we also have adjacent angles that we call a linear pair because the two angles together, so angle 1 and angle 2, the reason it's called a linear pair because it makes a straight line as the angles form out and make 180 degrees. So angles that add together to equal 180 degrees, okay, would be supplementary. And again, these two are adjacent to each other. These two are separate, but either way, they would be 180. And I know this one is 180 because it forms a straight line, which would be exactly 180 degrees, which would be half a circle. I mentioned a linear pair just a second ago, but a linear pair is two angles that are adjacent and supplementary. They form that line. So again, if we notice here, I have two angles. So I have angle 1, and angle 1 is this angle. And again, they share that side, and then we have angle 2, which again shares that side. But those two together form that straight line, okay? Down here at the bottom, they form that straight line across. So therefore, angle 1 plus angle 2 is equal to 180 degrees. So a linear pair just simply means that they are adjacent and supplementary. All right, so we're going to look at some examples here. And we are going to label some things, and then we're going to kind of identify some angles based off of what we talked about. We're going to add in some algebraic equations with them as well. So for number one says to name two complementary angles. All right, so two complementary angles, that means that it need two angles that add up to be 90 degrees. So when I'm looking here, so I see this 90-degree angle mark. So honestly and genuinely, because they're vertical, there's a lot of things that I can kind of determine here. I can determine that these two together are 90, but these two are also um right here, that full angle here and that full angle are vertical angles. So we also know this is 90. Well, if that's 90, these 3 and 4 are technically a linear pair. So that means that that would have to be 90. And then 3 and 5 are vertical angles. So I don't have a set of angles other than um 1 and 2 for this particular example. So the only two angles that I have that when together would give me a 90-degree angle are going to be 1 and 2. So angle 1 and angle 2 are my two angles that would be complementary, because complementary means add up to be 90 degrees. Okay. So it says name two adjacent angles. So there's lots of adjacent angles here. So really there's several possibilities that we could list here. So really any two, adjacent just means that they are side by side and they share a vertex and an angle. So I could say lots of things. I could say that I have a linear pair that's 1 and 5. So I could say angle 1 and 5, they share a vertex and a side. I could say um 1 and 2. So angle 1 and 2, even though they are complementary, they're still adjacent. I could say 4 and 5. So there is, like I said, several possibilities for an adjacent angle pair. So it says name a pair of vertical angles. So if I'm naming a pair of vertical angles, I could say that there are two angles that are opposite of each other. So if we're looking at this one, I have angle 3 and angle 5. Now, technically, if I add 1 and 2 together, that is the same as 4, but those are two separate angles. So if I'm just going to name one pair of vertical angles, I would say angle 5 and angle 3. And then we want to name a pair of supplementary angles. So remember, supplementary angles simply mean 180 degrees. So a pair of supplementary angles, we would be looking for two angles that when added together give me 180. So I would say we could say 4 and 5, we could say 4 and 3. I mean, technically we could say angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, but because it said a pair, I'm just going to stick with two of them. So angle 4 and angle 3. But again, we could say a bunch of different combinations. All right, so we're going to look at some examples here. So if we go to number 5, it says find the value of x. Now, the first thing I notice about this example is that I have that right angle mark. So with that right angle mark, that tells me that these two angles together equal 90 degrees, so they're complementary. So if they're complementary, that means that they are also adjacent because they share a side. So I know that x plus 37 equals 90 degrees. So therefore, I know that x has to equal 53. So x is equal to 53 degrees. All right, so for number 6, it says find the measure of angle 1, and if it equals 114, find the measure of angle 2. So remember that m in front of the angle 1 means measure. So if we look at the linear pair that we have, I have measure of angle 1 is 114, and since they are a linear pair, we should be able to determine that angle 1 plus angle 2 are going to equal 180, which means they're supplementary. So if I say 114 plus the measure of angle 2, or you can call it x, that's going to equal 180. So then we are now able to say that the measure of angle 2 is going to equal 66. All right, so for number 7, it says find the missing angle measures. So if I look, I see I have the x, which means that they are vertical angles. And since we know they're vertical angles, we know that opposite angles are going to be congruent. So I'm going to focus first. We only have the measure of 135. So I know that y must also be 135 because they are vertical angles and vertical angles are congruent. So then we need to see what other relationships we have within those angles. And I can see that x and z are vertical angles, which are congruent, but we don't know x or z. But I can focus on the 135 that I already have, and I can say that I know that y is 135, so x and y are a linear pair. So since they're a linear pair, that means that x plus y is going to equal 180 degrees. And since they're equal to 180 degrees, I can say that x plus 135 equals 180. So therefore, I know that x and z are both equal to 45 degrees because x and z are congruent. All right, so number 8 says find the value of x. And there's quite a few relationships here that I can see. I see I have a 90-degree angle mark. I see that I do have 140 degrees. I have some linear pairs here. I have some vertical angles. So we have a lot of ways that we can kind of compare and try to find that missing angle of x. But the one thing I want to draw your attention to is x is part of that 90 degrees. So that's going to be important when it comes to finding it. All right, so if I look and I kind of focus on what can help me, I'm going to start by looking at the linear pair that goes with the 140 degrees. So I can see that their angle that's kind of shared or adjacent to 140 and adjacent to x. If we find that, then of course we can find x. So if I find that linear pair, I know that that is going to be 180 minus 140. So that's going to give me 40 degrees for that adjacent angle to both of those because, again, they are a linear pair, which means that they equal 180. Now that I know that that angle is 140, or the angle that was adjacent to the 140 is 40, I can now just use that angle with the complementary angles that are together. And so I know that x plus 40 is going to equal 90. And I know it's going to equal 90 because they're complementary. And I know that they're complementary because of that right angle mark in the vertex angle of those. So at this point, I can say that x plus 40 equals 90 degrees. So therefore, I'm now able to determine that x equals 50. All right, number 9 says angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. If the measure of angle 1 is this and the measure of angle 2 is this, find the measure of each angle. Now remember, a linear pair is 180 degrees. So I'm just going to set up a drawing, just a general sketch of a linear pair that are adjacent to each other. And so I'm able to kind of look at and visualize that, let's say angle 1, we're going to say is 4x plus 12, and then angle 2 is 6x minus 2. So we want to find the measure of each angle. So before we do that, we have to find x. So what I can do is I can set up an equation that shows angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 180. So we know angle 1 is 4x plus 12 plus angle 2 is 6x minus 2, and that equals 180 degrees. So we're going to combine our like terms, and that's going to give me 4x and 6x, which is going to be 10x, and then 12 minus 2 is going to be plus 10, equals 180. So we're going to subtract 10, and we now have 10x equals 170. Divide by 10, and we now know that x equals 17. So again, we found what x is equal to, but we want to find the measure of each angle. So to find the measure of each angle, we're going to substitute that x back into the angle measurement. So the measure of angle 1 was 4x plus 12. So we're going to say 4x plus 12, or 4 times 17 plus 12. And so 4 times 17, that's going to give me 68 plus 12 is going to give me 80 degrees. So I know angle 1 is 80 degrees, but I also know that angle 1 and angle 2 are equal to 180. So I should be able to determine that the measure of angle 2 is 100. Or I can substitute 17 back into the original expression for angle 2. So I can say 6 times 17. So if we have 6 times 17, that's going to be 102 minus 2, which again equals 100. All right, number 10 says the angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical angles. So I'm going to draw a sketch here just like I did previously. And vertical angles, remember, are congruent to each other. They're opposite. So I'm just going to set up and I'm going to put angle 1 at the top and angle 2 at the bottom. So angle 1 is 5x minus 13. And then at the bottom, that's opposite of that. For angle 2, we're going to put 2x plus 26. Now they want us to find the measure of angle 1. So if they're vertical angles, again, that means that they are congruent, which means that they are equal to each other in measure. So I can set up an equation, and in that equation, I can say that we have 5x minus 13, and that's going to equal 2x plus 26. And we're just going to simply solve this equation. So I'm going to subtract 2x to the left side. That's going to give me 3x minus 13 equals 26. Then I'm going to add 13. And then I have 3x equals 39. Divide by 3. And x is going to equal 13. Now again, we found the measure of x, or what x is equal to. We need to find the measure of angle 1. So I'm going to substitute 13 back into 5x minus 13. So I'm going to say 5 times 13 minus 13. So that's going to give me 65, and then 65 minus 13 is going to give me 52. All right, so looking at number 11. So number 11 says the measure of angle 1 is 4x minus 5, and the measure of angle 2 is 2x minus 1. Now, they want us to find the value of x, and there's a few things that I see here, but that right angle mark that is in there means that that is 90 degrees, which if I look at it, 1 and 2 are vertical angles to that 90-degree angle. So that means that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 90 degrees. So we're going to set up an equation to solve for x. So we're going to say 4x minus 5 plus 2x minus 1, and that's going to equal 90. So we're going to combine like terms and get 6x minus 6 equals 90. Then we're going to add 6 to both sides. And then we're going to say 6x equals 96. Divide by 6. And we now know that x equals 16. All right, number 12 says find the value of x. And what I should notice is that I have a linear pair. And those linear pairs means that the angles are adjacent and they're equal to 180 degrees. So what I can do is I can set it up and say 10x minus 17 plus 9x plus 7 equals 180 degrees. So combine like terms, then I'm going to get 19x minus 10, and that's going to equal 180. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides, and then I get 19x plus 190, divide by 19, and x equals 10. And again, they did ask us to find the value of x, so my answer is 10. All right, so for number 13, it says angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary angles. So remember, complementary angles means that it equals 90 degrees. And they tell us that the measure of angle 1 is 5x plus 9, and the measure of angle 2 is 7x minus 3, and they want us to find the measure of angle 2. So if they're complementary, we're going to take angle 1 plus angle 2 and set it equal to 90. So that's going to be 5x plus 9 plus 7x minus 3 equals 90 degrees. Combine like terms, so that's going to be 12x plus 6 equals 90. Subtract 6 on both sides. So 12x equals 84. And then we're going to divide by 12. So if I divide by 12, that means that x is equal to 7. So again, they want us to find the measurement of angle 2. So we're going to take 7 and we're going to substitute that into 7x minus 3. So 7 times 7 is going to be 49 minus 3. That's going to give me 46 as my angle measurement for number 2. And of course, if I wanted to find the measure of angle 1, I would say 90 minus 46, and that would give me the measure of angle 1, which is going to be 44. All right, so for number 14, it says find the value of x if BD bisects a angle ABC and the measure of angle ABC is 88. So I think there's some labels missing here. So when we label angles, we normally try to label the one side to the vertex to the other side. So I'm going to put a point on the left side. I'm going to call that one A. The vertex I'm going to call B. And the right side I'm going to call C. So again, the vertex is always that middle variable. So ABC is that whole big triangle, or not triangle, that whole big angle that was initially stated. Now, bisects means if I bisect an angle, that means I'm splitting it in half. So BD, so I'm going to go ahead and label that top ray D. And so BD is splitting that ABC in half. So it says the measure of ABC is 88. So if it's splitting it in half, I'm going to say 88 divided by 2, and that's going to equal 44. So that means that ABD and DBC both equal 44 because it splits it in half. That means they have to be the same angle. So again, if I write this, I'm going to put M, which means measure, of angle ABD, because it goes in order, and the measure of angle DBC, they're both equal to 44. So now that I know that, I can set it up and I can find the value of x. So I can say 7x plus 2 equals 44. So I'm going to subtract 2. So 7x equals 42, and I'm going to divide by 7. And I now know that x equals 6. So just as a reminder or going forward to remember, when you see the word bisects, it means to split it in half. All right, number 15 says find the value of each variable. So if we see right here, I have a linear pair. That means that we know that those two are equal to 180. Now, I do need to make sure when I set that up that the angle that I'm referring to, or the angles that I'm looking at, they do have the same variable so that I can solve those and they both have an x, so that works out. I'm going to say that 8x plus 2 plus 4x minus 14, that equals 180 degrees. All right, so again, combine like terms, that's going to be 12x minus 12 equals 180. Add that 12 over. So I have 12x equals 192. And then we're going to divide 12 on both sides. And once I divide 12 on both sides, that's going to give me 16. So we now know that x equals 16. Now, what else could I potentially determine here by looking at this situation? So I know that x is equal to 16, but what other pieces do I have? Well, I will say that I do know there's actually several things that I've noticed. So these are vertical angles right here. So if I can find this angle, this is 90 degrees. So I know that these two together would have to equal that one. I have another linear, or I have, these are all complementary. So I could say this angle plus 90 plus this angle equals 180. There's actually several ways that I can do that, but I think it'll be easier to kind of focus on with it the angle measurement. So if I substitute here and I say 4 times 16 and I subtract 14, so that's going to give me 4 times 16 minus 17. So we know that this angle is 47 degrees. All right, so then for this one, I have 8 times 16 plus 2. So we have 8 times 16, that's 128 plus 2. So we now know that this one is 130 degrees. Okay. All right, so hold on. Something is not right because they should equal 180. Did I calculate that wrong? Yes, I did. I did minus 17 instead of minus 14. So this should be 50 degrees, which now makes more sense because 180 plus, or 130 plus 50. All right, so again, I think that your best bet for this one is to kind of make it as simple as possible. And since these are vertical angles to the 130, so I know that these are 130 degrees because they're vertical. That, and I can go ahead and subtract the 90 if you want to, because I know that this is 90 degrees. So I can go ahead and say, over here, I can say 130 minus 90. That's gonna leave me with 40 degrees. So I know that this is 40 degrees. So I can go ahead and take that and say 2y plus 6 equals 40 and solve that. So 2y equals 34. Divide that by 2. And we now know that y equals 17. So there's lots of relationships here that, again, that you could have identified. I went with the vertical angles. I could have said, I knew this was 50 plus 90, and I knew that all three together were 180 degrees. So I could have subtracted that from 108 or from 180 and got 40. So there's lots of ways I could have looked at it. You just kind of got to work through and see what you have for each example. So please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions on this.